January 1st, 2027, Trump shuts off waivers for covered defense materials. Now let that sink in. He just snapped the China waiver cartel in half and told the Pentagon parasites the free pass ends here. And wait till you hear what contractors must hand over within 180 days. We're talking within 180 days, the Department of War must trace supply chains from raw materials to the end-use products. And that line stopped me because Trump just forced sunlight into the exact racket the bipartisan globalists and lazy defense contractors hid for years. Now look at what they did to us. They let China sit inside the guts of our arsenal, gutted factories in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and called it efficiency. Scott Bessent nailed it cold. Trade policy, industrial capacity, and national security are inseparable. Exactly. You cannot build the strongest military on Chinese leverage. That was insanity. And Trump is ending it. And breaking tonight, near record tungsten prices and new federal stockpile planning are intensifying focus on America's critical mineral supply chain. In Washington, tungsten is now a national security priority for fighter jets, tanks, missiles, drones, and ammunition. Yet the United States has seen no U.S. commercial tungsten mining since 2015. The president's Project Vault includes a $12 billion strategic stockpile with $30 billion in domestic production and millions towards restarting U.S. tungsten production. Vault Strategic Mining, trading as KNOX in Canada and KNXFF in the United States, is building a growing U.S. tungsten portfolio across mining-friendly U.S. jurisdictions, including Nevada's Great Basin, a historically productive tungsten region. The site carried a defense-related exploration contract in the Second World War and approximately 10,000 feet of drilling. USGS estimate roughly 168,000 tons of tungsten oxide, estimated in-ground value $30 to $50 billion. To find out more, check out the Next News intelligence briefing that's been prepared for you, linked below. So fraud by contractors triggers referral to the Attorney General for possible prosecution. So there it is. Trump didn't just bark at the cartel, he loaded consequences onto the executive order. You can feel the pain coming already. Now watch how the White House framed this move. This is the executive order that was just passed, securing America's defense supply chains and ensuring domestic acquisition of critical materials. I'm not going to go through everything here, but we'll give you the gist of it. By the authority vested in me as president, it is hereby ordered the United States military, most effective and powerful fighting force on the planet. Let me make it a little bigger here. It fields the most advanced weapons systems, technologies, utilizing cutting-edge equipment to dominate the modern battlefield. To continue this dominance in an era of renewed great power competition, the United States must secure its supply chains against physical, cyber, and economic subversion. It is the policy of the United States that not only the finished equipment deployed by our military, but also the critical minerals and components necessary to manufacture, maintain, sustain, and repair that equipment are sourced domestically or from allied nations. Despite the long-standing prohibition on the use of sensitive materials sourced from geopolitical adversaries, defense contractors have historically under-prioritized domestic production and resilience. My administration will act to ensure that the statutory requirements of 10 U.S.C. 4872 are strictly observed and result in resilient domestic and allied supply chains. So the executive order continues. It's quite vast, in fact. Now, look at this is huge. So this is the executive order that's just been released, and it shuts down the easy waiver game and tells contractors, find American or allied sources fast. Now, Senator Dave McCormick jumps in saying Trump is putting American workers at the center of military readiness. America should never depend on foreign adversaries for the critical minerals that power our military. POTUS signed in order to bring those supply chains home and put American workers at the center of keeping our forces ready to defend America. So he's framing this as basic common sense, no dependence on foreign adversaries for the materials behind our weapons. Next, the White House hammers the same point with his own message about keeping the U.S. military on the strongest on earth. Trump is acting to maintain America's military dominance and keep the U.S. military the strongest equipped in the world. Posting to the fact sheet on the new executive order to secure America's defense supply chain in ensuring domestic acquisition of materials. So the White House is selling this as a direct move to protect military dominance. Up next, the official fact sheet lays out the mechanics, tighter waiver limits, supply chain mapping, and pressure on contractors. Here's the fact sheet. President Trump secures America's defense supply chains and ensures domestic acquisition. Trump signed the executive order to secure America's defense supply chain, particularly for critical materials and components used in cutting-edge military equipment. The order limits waivers for critical materials from covered nations, directs the Department of War to initiate regulatory action for comprehensive supply chain mapping, and encourages defense contractors to qualify new domestic sources of critical material. The action aims to ensure America's continued military dominance and restore its strength and readiness. So that's the official White House readout. The framework is clear, fewer loopholes, more tracing, more made in America inputs for defense. Florida's Voice takes a step further, tying the order to aluminum action and tariffs on China. The executive action to boost defense supply chain, boost domestic aluminum, and impose tariffs on Canada. I said China before, my bad. Despite the long-standing prohibition on the use of sensitive materials sourced from geopolitical adversaries, defense contractors have historically under-prioritized domestic production and resilience. That's a direct quote from the executive order. So that's the broader package around defense, materials, aluminum, and tariffs. Next, the Washington Times zeroes in on the China piece, saying Trump is ordering the government to make sure contractors aren't hooked on adversaries for critical minerals. Trump signed the executive order requiring the federal government to ensure national security contractors are not dependent on adversaries like China for critical materials. The directive orders the Department of Defense, the Department of War, to map out and protect its supply chains. Now listen to Scott Bessent connect the dots between tariffs, industrial capacity, and national security at a Reagan Institute speech.
Trade policy, industrial capacity, and national security are inseparable. And to allow foreign dependencies to degrade any one of these domains is to allow them to define America's future. We told ourselves that so long as goods were cheaper overseas, it did not matter whether factories went dark in Michigan, Ohio, or Pennsylvania. We assumed that supply chains would always function smoothly and adversaries would always behave responsibly, and the invisible hand would correct vulnerabilities that too few in public life had the courage to confront. Beneath every one of those mistakes lay a more basic failure in our philosophy. In reducing economics to consumption, we forgot production. We measured abundance at the checkout counter rather than at the factory gate. We talked about GDP, but not enough about its composition. And we prized low-cost inputs without first asking whether a nation can remain sovereign when it loses command over the things that matter most. A country cannot outsource its industrial commons, ignore strategic concentration, and expect to remain secure. For manufacturing is more than output on a balance sheet, it is a reservoir of practical capability. Engineers and welders, tool and die makers, and logistic networks, plant managers and workers who know how to solve problems on the factory floor. When the ecosystem is strong, a country can adapt quickly.
So his argument is simple and tough. Cheap foreign input came with the national security bill America couldn't afford. Meanwhile, Democrats try to change the subject with John Ossoff launching accusations over a Kazakhstan tungsten deal. This is from Senator Ossoff's own account. Last September, the president of Kazakhstan calls Donald Trump and says he wants to grant tungsten mining rights to an American company. The very next month, Eric and Don Jr. get a stake in the American company pursuing the mining deal.
Listen to this. Last September, the president of Kazakhstan calls Donald Trump and says he wants to grant tungsten mining rights to an American company. And the very next month, Eric and Don Jr. get a stake in the American company pursuing the mining deal. 6 days later, 6 days after Prince Eric and Prince Don get their stake, Kazakhstan announces this company will get, quote, the largest known undeveloped tungsten resource in the world. A few more weeks go by. And then the US government, run by their father, sets aside $1.6 billion of your tax dollars to fund and finance their mining project in Kazakhstan. All this while you pay more for gas, for groceries, for healthcare. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Billions from foreign princes.
You get the point, right? So he's throwing mud over Kazakhstan, trying to pin it on the Trump family. Next, watch how that line gets pressed in the briefing room, where Maggie Haberman asked Caroline Leavitt what the president knew and when.
Caroline, welcome back.
Thanks.
Last year, the administration signed a critical minerals deal, mining deal with Kazakhstan for a little-known U.S. company. It was an agreement that President Trump and Howard Lutnick got tentative approval for with Kazakhstan's president in September. 6 days before the deal was signed, which was in November, the president's older sons with other partners took a 20% investment in a company related to the deal. What did the president know about his son's involvement in this arrangement, and when did he find out about it?
From my understanding, Maggie, nothing. I've spoken to the president and his family about this. They would absolutely never do anything that would put the president in a place of a conflict of interest. And we have timelines to give you and to provide you, which we did to the news media at the time when this story broke, to prove that very point that I just made.
Sorry, just 1 second. So the president did not learn about it until it was in the media? That was when he found out?
That's my understanding of the matter, yes.
So the White House flatly rejects the conflict story and says Trump knew nothing about his son's stake until it hit the media. Now the bigger supply push at home, where Doug Burgum says Alaska drilling and critical mineral mining are surging.
I mean, that's how big Alaska is across this incredible state, with touching not even 1/10% of the surface. You can get at so many mining opportunities in this enormous, broad, beautiful state. And there's one, Ambler Road, we're going to be there in a couple days, where President Trump assigned the authority to build a 211-mile road that goes into an area that there are over 1,700 mining claims that have been undeveloped because there was no road infrastructure. And building that road is going to allow that development to occur across a number of key critical minerals.
So after hearing about Alaska and the drive to mine critical minerals here at home, the left predictably melts down. Next, now this attacks Trump's move to open millions of acres in Utah to fossil fuel extraction and mining. Now this, Trump signed an executive order slashing 2 national monuments in Utah by more than 90%. That means 3 million acres of formerly protected land will now be open to fossil fuel extraction and mining. Good. Good. I'm tired of national monuments blocking our ability to be prosperous nations. That's just another level of communism right there.
Sign. This is very nice. I'm very happy about this. And better than the first time. Okay, here's number 1. Almost 3 million acres. Going to be well taken care of now. Okay. Penn, who should I give this to? Huh? Maybe the governor's representative, right?
Trade policy, industrial capacity, and national security are inseparable. That's what the Treasury Secretary said, and Trump turned that sentence into policy by killing the January 1st, 2027 waiver game, forcing full supply chain maps and putting fraud cases on track to the Attorney General, which means the bipartisan globalist class and the defense contractor cartel do not get to stuff Chinese dependents into America's weapons and call it normal. Defense contractors, the Pentagon bureaucracy, and every China-addicted boardroom in Washington just got their deadline, January 1st, 2027. That is the demand now. Comply or get crushed. Trump is not nibbling around the edges here. He's hammering shut one of the ugliest scams in modern government, where America's military got built with foreign choke points while American towns got hollowed out. Now, share this with one person who still thinks supply chains are just boring paperwork, because let's look at this order again. 180-day mapping from raw materials to end products, waiver crackdowns, and fraud referrals to the Attorney General. That is enforcement. And that is a president who names the weakness and smashes it. So drop your take in the comments. Should any contractor tied to Chinese sourcing lose every federal dollar? And that January 1st, 2027 crackdown is exactly the kind of White House story the platforms love to smother. So text White House to 844-840-4963. Next News Network is credentialed inside the White House, and our nightly insider dispatches come straight from the building to your phone. First, direct and clear before YouTube buries the trail.